Have you ever noticed how some people seem to fall in love the way others fall asleep? Suddenly, completely, without even realizing they've crossed the threshold. One moment they're strangers, and the next, they're rewriting their entire future around someone they met 3 days ago. There is something strange about this, isn't there? Because falling in love too fast doesn't feel reckless when you're inside it. It feels like recognition, like coming home, like finally finding the person who makes sense of all your scattered pieces. But here is what's fascinating. The same intensity that feels like destiny in the beginning often becomes the very thing that unravels everything in the end. What's really happening in the psychology of someone who falls in love too fast? And more importantly, why does it keep happening? Even when you promised yourself it wouldn't happen again. You meet someone maybe at a coffee shop, maybe it's online, maybe it's through friends. And within hours, you feel like you've known them forever. The conversation flows effortlessly. They laugh at your jokes. They seem to understand you in ways no one else does. And suddenly, you're texting constantly. You're making plans. You're imagining what your life could look like together. You're thinking about introducing them to your friends, wondering if they'd get along with your family, picturing lazy Sunday mornings that haven't happened yet. 3 dates in, and you're already using the word we. To everyone else, it looks impulsive, maybe even desperate. But to you, it feels like clarity, like finally seeing in color after years of grayscale. The psychology behind falling in love too fast is rooted in something much deeper than romance. It's about attachment, about identity, and about the stories we tell ourselves, about who we are and what we need to feel whole. Let's talk about attachment theory for a moment. Psychologist John Bowlby discovered that the way we bonded with our caregivers in childhood creates a blueprint for how we connect with others as adults. If you grew up with inconsistent care parents who were sometimes present and sometimes absent, sometimes warm and sometimes cold, you likely developed what's called an anxious attachment style. And here's what really happening when you have anxious attachment. You learned early on that love is unpredictable, that connection requires constant vigilance, that you need to move fast and hold tight because people might disappear. When you meet someone new and feel that spark, your nervous system doesn't say, let's take our time and see how this develops. It says, finally, don't let this slip away. You're not falling in love too fast. You're trying to secure attachment before it can be taken from you. And this is where it gets complex, because the speed of your feelings isn't actually about the other person at all. It's about projection. When you fall in love quickly, what you're often falling in love with is potential. You're falling in love with the person you imagine they could be, the life you imagine you could have, the version of yourself you imagine you could become with them. Psychologists call this idealization, the tendency to focus only on positive traits, while ignoring red flags or incompatibilities. Your brain is essentially filling in gaps with fantasy, creating a complete picture from incomplete information. And here's why this happens. When you fall in love too fast, you're often not looking for a real person. You're looking for a solution. Maybe you're lonely, and this person represents the end of loneliness. Maybe you're insecure, and their attention validates your worth. Maybe you're lost, and they give you direction. Or you're running from something painful, and they offer escape. The intensity you feel isn't about them. It's about what you need them to be. But the truth is, no one can carry that weight. No one can be your therapist, your purpose, your identity, and your salvation all at once. Let's dig deeper into the neurochemistry of this pattern. When you fall in love, even if it's too fast, your brain floods with dopamine, oxytocin, and norepinephrine. These are the same chemicals involved in addiction. Literally, the same neural pathways that light up when someone uses cocaine are the ones that activate during early-stage romantic love. This is why falling in love too fast feels so good. You're essentially getting high off another person. Researchers have found people who fall in love quickly tend to have more volatile dopamine responses. Your brain is seeking that rush, that euphoria, that feeling of electric aliveness that comes from new connection. And just like any high, you develop tolerance. The intensity fades. The person you idealized reveals themselves to be human, complex, sometimes disappointing, and suddenly, the relationship that felt like destiny 2 months ago feels suffocating or boring or wrong. What do? Often, you leave. You find someone new. You chase that feeling again. It's not that you're incapable of love, it's that you're addicted to the feeling of falling. And maybe that's the real issue. You've confused the intoxication of new romance with the substance of real love. But here's where it gets interesting. Falling in love too fast isn't just about attachment or neurochemistry. It's also about identity diffusion, the psychological term for not having a solid sense of who you are. When your identity is unstable or unclear, other people become mirrors. You look to them to tell you who you are. You adapt to their interests, their values, their lifestyle. You become whoever you think they need you to be. This is why the love feels so intense so quickly. Because you're not just connecting with them, you're using them to construct yourself. Psychologist Margaret Mahler talked about this in her work on separation and individuation. She found that people who struggle to develop a separate sense of self often merge with romantic partners, losing their boundaries in the process. You stop knowing where you end and they begin. Your moods depend entirely on their moods. Your happiness requires their approval. Your plans revolve around their schedule. And at first, this feels like intimacy or true connection, like being so in love that you've become one person. But it's not intimacy. It's and the moment they pull back even slightly, because they need space, because they're having a bad day, because they're simply being a separate human being, You panic. You feel abandoned. You feel like you're disappearing. Because without them, you don't know who you are. Here's the truth that no one wants to hear. If you consistently fall in love too fast, you're probably not falling in love with the person at all. You're falling in love with the escape from yourself. You're falling in love with not having to sit with your loneliness, your anxiety, your unresolved pain. You're falling in love with distraction, with validation, with the temporary relief of feeling wanted. And listen, there is no judgment in this. We all do it to some degree and use relationships to avoid parts of ourselves we don't want to face. But when it becomes a pattern, when you keep falling hard and fast and then crashing, when you keep choosing people who aren't right for you, when you keep mistaking intensity for compatibility, it's worth asking, what am I running from? Because the psychology of falling in love too fast is often the psychology of running away from yourself. What are the long-term consequences of this pattern? First, you end up in relationships that aren't actually right for you. When you commit too quickly, before you really know someone, you're making decisions based on fantasy rather than reality. And fantasy can't sustain a relationship long-term. Second, you exhaust yourself emotionally. Constantly riding the roller coaster of intense beginnings and painful endings takes a toll. You start to feel jaded, cynical, like maybe you're just not meant for lasting love. Third, you never learn how to be alone. And this might be the most important consequence of all. Because here's what research consistently shows. People who are comfortable being alone, who have a strong sense of self independent of relationships, are the ones who build the healthiest partnerships. They choose partners rather than needing them. They love from overflow rather than from emptiness. But when you fall in love too fast, you never give yourself the chance to develop that stability. You jump from relationship to relationship, always seeking completion outside yourself. And the cruel irony is that the very thing you're searching for, deep, lasting, secure love, which requires the one thing you keep avoiding, being with yourself long enough to know who you are. But here is where we need to shift the narrative. If you're someone who falls in love too fast, you're not broken, you're not damaged, you're not incapable of real love. You're someone with a huge capacity for feeling, someone who dives deep, someone who isn't afraid of intensity or vulnerability or opening your heart wide. These are beautiful qualities. The world needs people who love boldly. The problem isn't the depth of your feeling, it's the speed, lack of discernment, and the confusion between intensity and intimacy. And here's the good news. This is learnable. You can change this pattern. It starts with awareness, noticing when you're doing it, catching yourself in the moment when you want to text them for the 15th time today, when you're imagining your wedding before you've had a real conflict, when you're ignoring the small voice that says, something doesn't feel right here. It continues with pausing, creating space between the feeling and the action, resisting the urge to rush, asking yourself, am I responding to who this person actually is or who I need them to be? And it deepens with self-work, understanding your attachment style and healing the wounds that make you seek completion in others, building a life that feels full, even when you're single. This isn't about becoming cold or guarded, it's about becoming grounded. Here's what's really happening when you learn to slow down. You start to see people clearly, not through the haze of projection or fantasy, but as they actually are: complex, imperfect, human. You start to notice compatibility beyond chemistry. Do your values align? Do your communication styles work together? Can you handle conflict constructively? You start to build trust gradually, which is how real intimacy forms, not through intensity, but through consistency, through showing up and through seeing and being seen over time. And most importantly, you start to discover that you don't need someone to complete you. You're already complete. A partner is someone who adds to your life, not someone who gives it meaning. This is the paradox. The moment you stop needing love to save you is the moment you become capable of the kind of love that actually lasts. Let me tell you what real love looks like. Not the kind that happens too fast, but the kind that grows slowly, steadily, with roots that go deep. Real love is boring sometimes. It's seeing someone at their worst and choosing to stay. It's disagreeing and working through it. It's growing in different directions, but still choosing to grow together. Real love doesn't feel like drowning. It feels like learning to swim. It doesn't consume you. It expands you and complements you. And you can't rush your way to this kind of love. You can only build it slowly, with someone who's willing to build it with you. If you're someone who falls in love too fast, here's what I want you to know. Your capacity for love isn't the problem. Your impatience with uncertainty is. Your desire for connection isn't wrong. Your fear of loneliness is just louder than your trust in timing. You're not too much. You're just directing all that muchness toward people who haven't earned it yet. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you feel that familiar rush, that certainty, that sense of finally finding what you've been looking for, maybe you pause and you ask yourself, am I falling in love with this person? Or am I falling into an old pattern? And maybe you give yourself permission to slow down, to wonder instead of knowing, and discover instead of deciding. Because the truth is, you deserve someone who loves you at your actual pace. Not just your panicked one. You deserve someone who sees you clearly, not through the blur of your intensity. You deserve love that's built, not manufactured. Love that deepens over time rather than peaks immediately and fades fast. And that kind of love, it's worth waiting for. It's worth being patient for. It's worth knowing yourself for. The psychology of a person who falls in love too fast is really the psychology of a person who hasn't yet learned to fall in love with their own company first. But you can learn, You can change. You can become someone who chooses love consciously, not compulsively. And when you do, everything changes. Not because you stop feeling deeply, but because you start feeling clearly. See you in the next video.